Shout out to G-Man Boxing.
If there's one thing over the years boxing has taught us, but specifically heavyweight boxing has taught us, is not to plan ahead for a fight. Because more often than not, something happens. And more often than not, it happens unexpectedly. Where am I going with this? Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury. Now, it's the fight we all wanted this summer. It ain't happening for obvious reasons. I'm not going to go into that. I've already done it before. But there is still hope of salvaging this fight for late 2021 or early 2022, if both guys get through their respective fights. But what has heavyweight boxing taught us over the years? It's taught us to never plan ahead and never look in the future if a big fight hinges on both guys getting through their respective fights. Because I'm telling you now, I would not be at all shocked if one guy doesn't get through it. Why? Because it's heavyweight boxing. It's, put it like this, right? Anthony Joshua. Now, although fundamentally they didn't have any fights planned up at this time back in 2019, there was no real plans for a unification with Wilder or anything like that, because it was kind of all over the place. But Fury was fighting Schwartz, Wilder was fighting Brazil, AJ was fighting Ruiz. They fought within, I think, 3 weeks of each other. 3-4 weeks of each other. Now, both guys, and I think I might have even done a video saying I wouldn't be surprised if one guy has a bit of a tricky time getting through one of those. Now, we expected them all to win, but who ended up faltering? AJ got caught by the left hook by Ruiz. And to be fair, he had the toughest fight out of the three on paper anyway. And he ended up getting caught by Ruiz. You know, never recovered, got taken out. But let's look at heavyweight boxing in a nutshell. Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte last year. Now, bear this in mind, right? Had Dillian Whyte got through that Povetkin fight, because he was mandatory challenger with the WBC in the first fight, that mandatory was due February of this year. Right? It was due February of this year, providing Dillian Whyte got through that Povetkin fight. So, had he beaten Povetkin, we would have to be talking, unless Wilder, the arbitration hearing, got in the way, but fundamentally we'd have to be talking about Wilder versus, or Fury versus Dillian Whyte this year. Because they were going to call that mandatory this year. We were thinking, okay, we want AJ versus Fury 2021, but we'd have to get through this. Well, obviously, what happened? He got knocked out by Povetkin. Got knocked out cold. Whilst he did avenge that in the rematch, it's put that mandatory back to the point where it's pretty much a write-off at this stage. Let's look at, you know, heavyweight boxing in the 90s. You know, you had Tommy Morrison, who was scheduled to face Lennox Lewis, and I believe it was a unification. He was WBO champion. Well, it was the WBO was lightly regarded back in the 90s, but it was a unification of sorts. He had to get through Michael Bent. Michael Bent, if you've ever seen him fight, he lost his pro debut. He was a good amateur, Michael Bent, to be fair, but he was shot. Like, he was one of these pros, a bit like Paddy Barnes, who they spent too much time in the amateurs, and by the time they turned pro, there was nothing left. You go look at, you know, Michael Bent. He got knocked out in his debut, I think, in the first round of all. Was it? Yeah, he was definitely knocked out in his debut. I don't know if it was in the first round. But he goes in there, knocks out Tommy Morrison in the round. That absolutely F's up the Lennox Lewis fight. Absolutely destroys it. Mike Tyson versus Evander Holyfield. Meant to happen in the year 1990. Would have been a very good fight. I still think Holyfield beats Mike Tyson. I think he beats every version of Mike Tyson, personally. I mean, the Tyson fans mightn't like that, but I think Holyfield always had Tyson's number. But that fight was meant to happen in 1990. What happened? Buster Douglas came in. 43-1 underdog. Knocks out Mike Tyson. That's heavyweight boxing. That is heavyweight boxing in a nutshell. I think because these are much bigger men, I think the skill gap is not so vast with heavyweight boxing as it is in other divisions. Like, for example, you look at welterweights. Pretty much everyone in the welterweight division of the top 10 is more skilled than Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, etc., etc. The bigger they are, the less skillful they are. So the skill gap between, you know, top 10, you know, is not as profound a heavyweight. All the guys can punch. You know, even if they're not a noted puncher. If you are 6'4", 240 pounds, and you load up a shot and you hit another man similar weight on the chin, you're knocking their teeth out. Doesn't matter if you're not noted as a big puncher. If you put all your weight behind the shot, you're going to do some serious damage. Serious damage. And I think that's one of the reasons why heavyweight boxing is so unpredictable. Now, we look at AJ versus Usyk. Usyk is not a noted big puncher at heavyweight, but the skill he has, the skill advantage he has over these fighters is vast. You know, people keep going on and saying, well, look at the, you know, Usyk and Chisora, you know, if that was AJ, I'm always like, well, bring it back for a sec, right? One, AJ is not as good as cutting off the ring as Derek Chisora is. Derek Chisora is very good at cutting off the ring. Second, he's not as physical as Chisora. AJ, if he tried to fight the way Chisora did in the first 2 rounds, he'd need about 5 rounds off to catch his breath. You know, he's not going to do that to Alexander Usyk. Yes, he'd be better in the clinches, that which I've no doubt. But what Derek Chisora did in the early rounds against Alexander Usyk, yeah, he did bother him a little bit. But once Usyk was able to adjust, you know, what did you want? Did you want Usyk to knock Chisora out in a couple of rounds? Because Parker couldn't do that. You know, Tyson Fury, although he beat Chisora convincingly, he couldn't do that. David Hayes the only guy to really iron him out early. Alright, Dylan White did iron Chisora out, but that was a really tough fight. So you would look at Alexander Usyk and say, apart from Tyson Fury and possibly Vitaly Klitschko, you know, and definitely Vitaly Klitschko, he's probably done the next best job. You know, and that's Chisora, a fully fledged heavyweight. You know, against AJ, he's going to have a speed advantage, you know, if he's in the 2 teens or 220s, which I hope he is. He's going to have, you know, a stamina, certainly having a stamina advantage. He's going to be able to throw a lot more punches, going to have good head movement. He's going to have a lot of advantage in there. It's going to really offset AJ. And that fight really is a tricky fight for AJ. And that's the fight where I would, that's, if someone said there's going to be an upset, I would imagine it's going to be that fight, personally. And I wouldn't consider Usyk beating AJ an upset personally, but if one of the guys was going to lose, I would imagine it would be that fight, personally, just because of the skill of Alexander Usyk. But then you look at Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. Whilst, yes, Fury has boxed Deontay Wilder and he should have won the first fight, he didn't get the decision, it was a draw. I personally felt he won, it was close. He went in the next fight and he didn't box Deontay Wilder, he took it to Wilder and he battered Deontay Wilder from pillar to post. Now you would look at that and say, well look, he's beaten him twice. Realistically, the second time was a demolition job. What has Wilder got? I've said it once, I'll say it again. Heavyweight boxing, Wilder is the biggest puncher in the division, bar none. You know, and if Fury gets a little bit lackadaisical in there, one right hand, especially if Wilder's fresh, one right hand, even if he gets up, and although Fury has good recovery powers, as we've seen, if that happens early in the fight, it could be curtains. And one other thing as well I worry about Tyson Fury, and this was a worry I had in the Wilder rematch, and it's still a worry, is that cut. You know, if we see him using his jab more, which we've seen him do a bit with Malik Scott, that jab would be crucial, trying to get that cut opened. Because bear in mind, scar tissue tends to last. It tends to always linger. You know, I've used this analogy before, I'll use it again. If you look at Vitaly Klitschko, and obviously that cut against Lennox Lewis was worse than the one Fury got, and no one dreams of me otherwise. That was worse. That cut was way worse. It was deeper. It was a horrible gash. 70-something stitches. He never really got tagged on the eye again for the remainder of his career up until 2010 when he fought Kevin Johnson. 2010, 2011. Now, Johnson was able to counter a couple of Klitschko shots with his own jab. But they were powerful jabs, but they landed on Vitaly Klitschko, and you could see his eye post-fight. It was smashed up a bit. You know, you could see the residual damage from the scar tissue was still there 7-8 years later. We're talking less than just under 2 years later. So you got to wonder about that as well. Maybe Deontay Wilder won't knock Tyson Fury out necessarily, but if his jab is accurate, that could bash that cut up. And you never know. Could stop it on cuts. As I've said before, I'll say it again. Heavyweight boxing, notoriously unpredictable. It's notorious for that, and it will always be that way. As I said, you very seldom see upsets at like bantamweight, super bantam, flyweight, stuff like that between. You very seldom see champions lose when they really shouldn't. It does happen, don't get me wrong, it's boxing, there's always room for upsets, but it happens more so at heavyweight because the skill gap is just, it's not as vast, you know. I mean, if we look at, let's just say Errol Spence, right? We look at Errol Spence and we name a top 10 welterweight, you know, who would you put in the top 10, who would I pick? Let's just say Josecito Lopez, just for argument's sake, you know, he's a decent fringe contender. You would never pick Josecito Lopez to upset Errol Spence. But at heavyweight, if you took, we'll say, like, you know, an Anthony Joshua, and you got, well, say Andy Ruiz, you know, what happened the first time. You know, you take someone like that who's a decent contender. At heavyweight, it's different. You know, you could see, and obviously styles play a big factor in it as well, that has to be said, we take that into consideration. But the skill gap is not as vast. And these guys can crack. Adam Kalnacki, although I never rated him, I've seen Robert Helenius get knocked out by Gerald Washington. I've seen Robert Helenius, you know, look awful over the years. And he went in there and he was able to knock Adam Kalnacki out. You know, I didn't think that. A lot of other people didn't think it. I was very surprised by that. But that's heavyweight boxing at the end of the day. It's just like that. And Helenius can always punch. It has to be said, you know. A 6'6", 250-pound man, if he hits you bang on the chin, you're going to have problems. You know, unless you're Marius Wack, you're going to have problems. Serious problems. So that's what I got to say about that. Now, personally, I will be picking both guys in their respective fights when they're announced. I will confidently pick Tyson Fury to beat Deontay Wilder. I won't confidently pick Anthony Joshua to beat Alexander Usyk, but I think he will. I think he'll have... I think that's a point fight. And I think AJ, as we've seen through the years, he will get the benefit of the doubt. What I'm talking about is the Klitschko fight. No way in hell AJ was winning that fight before he got the stoppage. I don't know how the judges had it so wide. I think one judge had Klitschko ahead, but the other two had it by AJ for a good bit. I don't know how they did that. Same with Parker. Although I thought I won the Parker fight, you know, comfortably, the scorecards were a little bit too wide for my liking. I thought that was an 8-4 kind of fight. And I think they all had it like 11-1, which was a bit too wide for me. So you would imagine AJ will have the look of the judges to favour them. But as I said, anything can happen. AJ, we know if he gasses, we know he gets hurt, he stays hurt for a while, so you never know. I'm going to call it here. Let me know in the comments section what you think will happen between these two fights. Like I said, I'll pick both guys. More confidently Fury, because I know that it's a more even playing field than with AJ Usyk. And what I mean by that is they've both been out of the ring the exact same amount of time. We don't know what way Wilder is mentally. It's all well and good to see him on the pads, but until we see him in the ring against the man who stopped you. And bear in mind, it's new territory for Wilder. Has he ever rematched someone? Well, he's only ever lost once, so he's going straight in with a rematch of the guy who beat him. We don't know how that will play on the mind. You know, Dylan White can do that against Povetkin. He talked confidently, he knew what he had. Yeah, Povetkin was shot, but still, it takes a certain degree of, you know, mental strength to get over such a devastating knockout. Wilder has made all these excuses. Does that show mental strength? You know, he's been stone quiet until November of last year. You know, the fight happened in February. So I'll be a bit more confident picking Fury. Usyk, ooh, that's a tricky fight. Favour AJ slightly, but that's a 60-40 fight for AJ, I think. Let me know what's said in the comment section. I'm going to end it here. What do you think? Would you be surprised if both guys lose? If both guys lose, one or the other loses? Or do you think that I'm looking at this too much and both guys should win the fight? So let me know. But there's one thing is, quote, who was it? Was it Napoleon who said it? Was it Napoleon who said it? Oh no, it was George Santayana. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. What does he mean by that? It's history is always going to repeat itself. And that's why we have so many, you know, that's why we have so many upsets. I was going to say something else, but that's why we have so many upsets in heavyweight boxing. Because you always look past a certain someone, or you always plan ahead, and then boom, something comes in and stops it. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed me chatting. I hope if you're in work or anything like that, you know, I've got you through it with this video, however long it is. Lads and lasses, if you could hit the like button, hit the notification bell as well. That does help your boy out as well. You know, you get updates when the videos come through. Subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. We're almost halfway to 5k. That is crazy. I only hit 4k last month. Right, that's crazy. So I appreciate the support. I hope you are having a great day wherever in the world you are. Yeah, people from all around the world listen to my videos. Appreciate that. Thanks for that, people. Subscribe, of course, if you're new. Hashtag GMansRocks, all that good stuff. Lads, that's for now. I'll talk to you.